Hey, y'all, and welcome to the first lesson of the year. Today, we're just going to be doing a bit of an introduction to statistics and uh, just some vocabulary at the beginning, just getting us started. And so, of course, first we're going to talk about what is statistics. And I always say that statistics is less math and more of a science, and a science that uses math a lot. And we are going to be talking about the three elements of statistics this year. One of them being collecting data. We will sort of do that in the middle, even though that would come first. Analyzing data. That's what we're going to start with up front. That's where we make some calculations. We display what we've collected. We look at different graphs or charts. And then we're going to be doing some drawing conclusions. Uh, that's what we'll do towards the end. That's called inferential statistics. That's where we take the information we've collected, the numbers we've crunched, and we try to use it to understand the world. And so these are sort of the steps, sort of laid out there, what I talked about, where we need to take a question, collect data to try and answer that question, analyze what it is we see, and then interpret it. It's a good time to remind you that if I ever am going too fast, that you can pause the video. If you've missed something that I've said, you can rewind it. And what I really encourage you to do is to not listen and write at the same time. So if you want to write something down, that would be awesome. You should pause the video so that you don't miss anything I say. So here we have a chart of data that was collected in some way, and that's the piece that we'll talk about maybe towards the middle of the year, how this data would have been collected. And we have a bunch of information about specific households. And if I look down at the definitions down here, uh, they are what is displayed in this data. So we have individuals in the data. Those are the usually people or animals or things that are being described or studied. And in that case, the things we are studying are households. So these numbers have to do with household number 4 or household number 7, so on and so forth. And then region of country, number of people there. These are all the variables, the items of interest about the individuals. So all of the rest of these columns are our variables. And so we have different types of variables. Two that we'll discuss: categorical. Those are types of variables you can literally place into a category. And quantitative, those are ones that can be measured. Sometimes it might be a little hard to decide if something is categorical or quantitative. For example, zip codes. Zip codes can be confusing because they are numbers. And so you want to say they're quantitative, but usually a zip code represents a region of a state or a county, and that's kind of a category. So sometimes they can be a little ambiguous. But if we go up here, the the ones that can be placed into categories are region, whether or not you have a smartphone, how you responded to the survey that where they collected this information. Those are categorical variables. We can't measure them. You will just be part of a category based on how you answered. The others are things that have units: number of people, years, and household income. Those would be quantitative. I apologize if my handwriting is not so great. I'm having a little bit of a lag while I'm recording. So, um, this is the first video of the year. We'll figure this out and make it smoother. So, those represent two different types of data that we could collect. We collected them all at once. But then we can analyze the quantitative variables, we can analyze the categorical variables, and that's what we'll spend this year doing, showing how we would do that. So you have this on your paper. What I would like you to do is pause now and I would like you to answer the questions based on this data. We're looking for the individuals. We're looking for you to pick out two categorical variables and two quantitative variables. So you should pause and you should do this on your own. If you get stuck, you should always ask for help. It doesn't matter if you have not finished the video yet. And then when you press play, I will have written down some answers. So in this case, we were studying information about the specific states, and actually they had randomly selected 40 states. Of course, they are not all documented here. And they found out about four different categorical variables. I asked you to label two. If you labeled them all, that would be great. The grade level, allergies, if you had them or not, the month you were born, and the preferred status. So I believe the preferred status is like, what is your goal in life? To be famous, healthy, happy, rich. Those are all things that we can put into a category. I know that grade level is years 9, 10, 11, 12, but we really would put that in a category. And then the quantitative variables are the ones you can measure: your age in years, your height in centimeters in this case, and your arm span also in centimeters. Once we collect data and we have it all together, we have it all cleaned up like we had in those tables, then we will start displaying data and trying to see what we would call the distribution of the data. And a lot of times we'll talk about the shape of the data distribution, and we're going to do a lot of things talking about distributions. And so, one of the simple ways that we can display this data that we've collected is in what we call frequency tables. There's two types. One literally shows how many times does that category show up, and this is for categorical data, by the way. This is for our preferred status. And another way is we can show it in a relative frequency table, which just shows how often does this show up relative to how many people or how many individuals participated in the study. So here we have more information than we had on the table. These are all of the 40, I believe we had 40 states. And so we can make a frequency table. So what I'm going to do is pause and write this down. So I made so that we can look at this all at the same time. I made a column for the status options, and we should put one down at the bottom that says total. It's a good idea to keep track of the total number. We can make some tallies. That's going to help us find the frequencies. So when you're going through here, I'm looking for the number of people who, or states where being famous was important, and I would just count them up. We're going to end up with 7, so I would end up making, and for time's sake, I'm not going through counting all of them. A strategy to help you would be to cross one out once you tallied it. We have 21 for happy. Okay, and in this frequency column, I'll have to slide over here a bit. We would just write the number, so 7 and 21. For healthy, we had 4. And for rich, there was 8. And again, I'm going very fast. If you want to pause and do this on your own to make sure that you can get the same numbers, that would be a great idea. And we should have a total of 40 because that's the number of pieces of information we have. The tally is nice because it sort of shows a picture of what our distribution looks like, and we'll talk about that more in the following lessons here this unit when we talk about how the distribution is shaped. This is going to give us a real clear picture of, our largest category, happy, our smallest category, healthy, famous, and rich were kind of the same, but still not the highest. The highest was happy. And then we could do a relative frequency where we just take that frequency and divide by the total 40. And we would get 0.175. We could do 21 over 40. We could do 4 over 40. And these would be called relative frequencies. So, how much or how often do they occur relative to the total number of data points, which we had, again, we had 40. And if we add it up or we add up all of those decimals, it should add up to a total of one, showing 100% of the data is those four options. So we have a tally, we have a frequency chart, and then we have a relative frequency chart. So again, much like I asked you to do before, I'd like you to pause here and see if you can construct this table. So make a column for the response mode. That's what we are going to look at. Response mode. Make a column for the tallies, a column for the frequencies, and then a column for relative frequencies. When you're done with that, press play, and I will have my answer up here. This was a little simpler. We had less data. We only had 10 data points. And so we had 3 mail, 4 internet, and 3 phone. We can see the frequencies counted up and tallied, and then we can see them relative to the total number of data points, which was just 10. So 30% mail in, 40% internet, and 30% phone. And so this is not very interesting data because there's not very many data points. So the more data points we have, the more interesting it becomes. And we'll talk more about that through the year. So all of these responses were pretty close in the relative frequency. So if you have any questions about anything that happened during this lesson or the discussion of this lesson, and that applies to any lesson in the future, please make sure that you ask me. Ask me before you practice. Ask me right away as soon as you're confused. I'm always here to help. You don't have to learn this on your own. I am here to walk through it with you. If you're ready to go, if you feel like you got this lesson, go on to the practice. You should do all of the practice problems. You should check your answers as you're practicing. You shouldn't do maybe more than one question before you know you're doing it right so that you don't keep repeating mistakes. Take your time on your practice. Make sure you check your answers and always make sure you're asking for help. Good luck.